People do not decide to become extraordinary, they decide to accomplish extraordinary things.
Humans are born explorers. Humans ventured out of Africa at some point between 125,000 and 60,000 years ago. The earliest recorded explorer is Harkov, a governor of ancient Egypt who journeyed throughout the kingdom of Nubia, modern-day Sudan. The Phoenicians were a maritime trading culture that spread across the Mediterranean from 1500 to 300 BCE. They sailed as far west as present-day Morocco and Spain, using the galley, which was a man-powered sailing vessel. In the 6th century BCE, a Carthaginian sailor known as Hanno the Navigator explored the western coast of Africa. A Greek explorer named Pytheas of Massalia explored northern Europe, and he was the first Greek to visit and describe the coasts of Spain, France, and the British Isles. He may have even reached Iceland. Starting in 139 BCE, a diplomat named Jane Qian traveled west to secure an alliance for the Han Dynasty in China. His travels are associated with the Silk Road, a major route of transcontinental trade. The Polynesians were a maritime people who populated and explored the Central and South Pacific for around 5,000 years. The key invention to their exploration was the outrigger canoe. One of the earliest detailed descriptions of northern Europe is written by the Arab Muslim writer and traveler Ahmad ibn Fadlan. He journeyed from Baghdad to Eastern Europe. In 1325, another Muslim traveler named Ibn Battuta visited various parts of the Asian and African continent as well as parts of Europe.
I set out alone, swayed by an overmastering impulse within me.
Chinese explorer Wang Dayuan sailed along the South China Sea and reached as far as South Asia in the 1330s. Chinese Admiral Zheng He commanded expeditionary voyages to Asia and Africa from 1405 to 1433. He led an armada of 300 with a crew of over 27,000. His flagships were over 400 feet long with 7 masts. They are much bigger than their western counterparts. In the year 800, the Viking Age began. Vikings were Germanic Norse seafarers who traded from their Scandinavian homelands. They explored Europe and much of the western northern hemisphere via rivers and oceans. They sailed via Longship, which was a graceful, narrow, and light wooden boat with a shallow draft hull designed for speed. One of the earliest Viking explorers was Nadadr, who discovered Iceland. He was sailing from Norway to the Faroe Islands but lost his way. And the first Scandinavian who deliberately sailed to Iceland was Floki Vilgilarsson, and he experienced a harsh winter and decided to name the new land Iceland, which was not an accurate depiction of the entire island. Later, Vikings led by Eric the Red set out from Iceland and found an icy region uninhabited and settled there, and they cunningly named the island Greenland in order to encourage people to come. Eric the Red's son, Leif Erikson, continued his father's trend of exploring, and he is believed to be the first European to land in North America. He established a Norse settlement on the northern tip of Newfoundland in modern-day Canada.
We're all leaders, whether we want to be or not. Leif Erikson.
Back on the mainland, Marco Polo was an Italian merchant traveler who embarked on an epic journey to Asia with his father and uncle. Although he was not the first European to reach China, he was the first to leave a detailed chronicle of his experience.
I have not told half of what I saw.
The stage was set for the European Age of Exploration, which is one of the most important periods of exploration in human history thus far. We begin in 1488 with the Portuguese explorer Bartolomeu Dias, who sailed around the southernmost tip of Africa, and he was the first European to reach the Indian Ocean from the Atlantic. In 1492, an Italian navigator named Christopher Columbus led a Spanish transatlantic maritime expedition seeking a western route to Asia, and this led to the discovery of a new world.
In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. He had 3 ships and left from Spain. He sailed through sunshine, wind, and rain. He sailed by night, he sailed by day. He used the stars to find his way. A compass also helped him know how to find the way to go. Day after day, they looked for land. They dreamed of trees and rocks and sand. October 12th, their dream came true. You never saw a happier crew. The first American? No, not quite. But Columbus was brave and he was bright.
During this time, Europeans discovered and explored vast areas of the planet. John Cabot explored the North American mainland in 1497, and he was the first European to do so since the Vikings. Portuguese explorer Vasco da Gama set sail for India between 1497 and 1499, and he was the first European to reach India by sea. Around this time, a breakthrough occurred when Italian explorer Amerigo Vespucci demonstrated that Brazil and the West Indies were an entirely separate landmass unknown to Afro-Eurasians. This supercontinent came to be termed America, from the Latin version of Vespucci's first name. Vasco Núñez de Balboa was the first European to have seen or reached the Pacific from the New World, and he also settled the first permanent European settlement. Juan Ponce de Leon led the first European expedition to Florida, and Ferdinand Magellan was a Portuguese explorer who organized the first circumnavigation of the Earth between 1519 and 1522. He died en route, and Juan Sebastian Elcano took command of the ship and physically completed the circumnavigation. In the early 1500s, Spanish conquistadors Hernan Cortez and Francisco Pizarro led separate trips to conquer and colonize parts of South America, and this was part of the first phase of Spanish colonization of the Americas. Italian Giovanni de Verrazzano explored the Atlantic coast of North America in 1524. Alvar Núñez Cabeza de Vaca of Spain explored the North American Southwest from 1528 to 1536. One of the earliest French explorers, Jacques Cartier, mapped the St. Lawrence River in 1534. He was attempting to find a crossing to reach Asia through a northwest passage. Hernando de Soto led the first European expedition deep into the modern-day United States. Between 1540 and 1542, Francisco Vázquez de Coronado led a large Spanish expedition through parts of southwestern United States, and he had hoped to reach the mythical Seven Cities of Gold. Sir Francis Drake was an English sea captain, privateer, navigator, and politician during the Elizabethan era, and from 1577 to 1580, he was the first to circumnavigate the world in a single expedition as captain and leader throughout the entire circumnavigation. John Smith played an important part in the establishment of the first permanent English settlement in North America, and he also mapped the Chesapeake Bay area. Samuel de Champlain founded New France in Quebec City in 1608. Sir Henry Hudson was an English sea explorer and navigator. He made 2 attempts to find a northwest passage via a route above the Arctic Circle, and he explored a region around modern-day New York City for the Dutch East India Company. In 1620, the Mayflower transported the Pilgrims to the New World, and years after this was the golden age of pirates between 1716 and 1726. In the late 1700s, James Cook mapped lands from New Zealand to Hawaii in the Pacific Ocean. Daniel Boone was an American folk hero who was most famous for his exploration and settlement of what is now Kentucky.
All you need for happiness is a good gun, a good horse, and a good wife. Daniel Boone.
Second Lieutenant William Clark and Captain Meriwether Lewis explored the western United States in 1804. A Native American named Sacagawea joined the expedition from North Dakota all the way to the Pacific Ocean, aiding the travelers. Norwegian explorer Roald Amundsen led an Antarctic expedition in 1910, which was the first to reach the South Pole. Amundsen was also the first to go through the Northwest Passage. Sir Edmund Hillary and a partner were the first known and confirmed climbers ever to make it to the peak of Mount Everest in 1953. Exploration of space started in the 20th century with the invention of exo-atmospheric rockets. In 1961, the Vostok 1, the first manned spacecraft, carried Soviet cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin into space, and he completed an orbit of the Earth. Neil Armstrong was a naval aviator, officer in the U.S. Navy, and a test pilot before becoming an astronaut with NASA. He was launched by a Saturn V rocket from the Kennedy Space Center in 1969 and became the first man to walk on the moon.
That's one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind. Neil Armstrong.
Humanity is continuing to follow the impulse to explore, moving beyond Earth.
Many years ago, great British explorer George Mallory, who was to die on Mount Everest, was asked why did he want to climb it. He said because it is there. Well, space is there, and we're going to climb it.
Because there is a boundary between what is known and unknown, and some percent of our species is curious to what lies on the other side of that boundary, and they explore it.
In a way, the situation is like that in Europe before 1492. People might well have argued that it was a waste of money to send Columbus on the wild goose chase. Yet the discovery of the New World made a profound difference to the old. Spreading out into space will completely change the future of the human race and maybe determine whether we have any future at all.
And therefore, as we set sail, we ask God's blessing on the most hazardous and dangerous and greatest adventure on which man has ever embarked.